Darkness lingers in the corners of the static haze, in the dramas we become obsessed with, and in the TV shows that offer plot twist after plot twist. Amid the fictional entertainment, something far more sinister emerges: the truth, revealed through documentaries offering a glimpse into real horror. Number 10. December of 2010 marked an unequivocal change for North Africa and the Middle East. It was that year that the effects of poverty, corruption, and political repression had finally reached their peak, and the citizens demanded change. The following year, Egypt rose to the same summit, having had enough of the destruction inflicted upon them by those in power. As a result, 2011 marked the start of the Egyptian Revolution, which would ultimately depose Hosni Mubarak, the region's longest-serving leader. There was a significant amount of deep-seated anger regarding Mubarak's autocratic rule that led to corruption, economic downfall, police brutality, and oppression. To match the deep-seated anger was an unseen level of violence that erupted across Egypt in protest, demanding action and demanding Mubarak be removed from the presidency. Enough was enough. The Square, a 2013 documentary film, served as an intimate observational piece that tells the continuing story of the Egyptian Revolution. Filmed through the eyes of 6 different protesters, we're shown the pure horror unleashed upon the region as the act of change was underway. The documentary begins in the tents of Tahrir Square, in the days leading up to the fall of the influential leader Hosni Mubarak. Following his exit, the film reveals how the revolutionaries, including one film crew member, Ahmed Hassan, returned to the square to pitch their tents in the continued crusade for a constitution and responsible leaders. What followed would be a disturbing moment where a hail of bullets rained down upon the large throngs of protesters, showing no mercy against those whom they viewed as lawbreakers. The square is home to the hard-to-watch moment when the army launched an all-out campaign against the activists. The audience watches in horror as intense and brutal violence grips Tahrir with a ceaseless fist. One of the activists, young Hassan, only narrowly escapes the medal. Despite his survival, he was left with lasting trauma. The documentary additionally captures the Maspero incident, which occurred in October of 2011, when Egyptian security forces carried out a shocking attack on protesters, running over them with army tanks. The Rabaa massacre was another dark moment that dominated the documentary. This event is what brought the film to a close, with an updated text suggesting that the Morsi supporters' camp had been cleared, and not without fatality. Adding to the gloom of the square was an event that would follow the documentary's conclusion. It was regarding the subsequent movements of the famed activist Hassan. The filmmaker and activist knew the risks of becoming a figure of resistance, but he didn't expect to be exiled from his home in Egypt. In 2014, the crisis had ended, but Hassan was not around to see the success that he was a part of. He was living in exile and feared retaliation from an authoritarian regime. Number 9. There exists a particularly unnerving documentary that follows the life of one man, who, from the moment he was born, was made to suffer a terrible illness. The Boy Whose Skin Fell Off is a 2004 documentary directed by Patrick Collerton. The boy, referred to in the title, is actually a 36-year-old man named Johnny Kennedy. He was born with a genetic condition known as dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa that causes extreme skin fragility. This condition meant that Johnny's skin quite literally would fall off by the slightest touch. His body, over the course of 36 tormenting years, had been left riddled with sores and scars, the result of minor friction. The condition not only left him in constant pain, but also upped Johnny's risk of cancer, a risk that would become a reality. The skin cancer didn't appear unexpectedly. It was bound to present itself at some point. Johnny was starting his final battle against cancer, knowing he may not make it out alive. And so he made contact with the documentarian Collerton. For months, the pair worked together on a documentary about the boy whose skin fell off, reliving his past, his struggles, and his diagnosis. Despite the subject matter, though, the documentary itself is uplifting and even described as provocatively humorous. The cynical jokes helped the audience accept the harsh truth more easily, but heartbreak still hung in the background. With a devilish sense of humor, the film captures the moment he starts looking for a coffin, which would become his final resting place, only to land on one with an unexpected baked bean can motif. His acute intelligence supports his unwillingness to suffer his own fate. Johnny refuses to shy away from his condition and wanted everyone to know that despite it all, he still lived his life to the fullest. Number 8. In 2022, Netflix began producing a sequence of docuseries titled Trainwreck, each of which depicted distressing events that have marred our collective history. The first of the collection was Trainwreck: Woodstock '99. The title accurately depicting the events of the Woodstock Music Festival of 1999 and how it was an absolute disaster. Initially, the focus of these three festivals centered around a counterculture, music, and peace, only for the 1999 Woodstock event to soar in and ruin it all, a tragedy highlighted by the Netflix documentary series. From the 23rd of July until the 25th, Rome, New York hosted Woodstock 1999. It was intended to honor and celebrate the very first festival of its kind that took place back in 1969. But the event would devolve quickly into utter chaos, violence, and assault. The destruction the result of poor planning and several other factors that would instigate a full-blown riot sweeping across the festival. The event had attracted 220 attendees from all over, with high-quality performers brought in, including bands like Limp Bizkit and the Red Hot Chili Peppers, which had become all the craze in the late 90s. As more than 200,000 people flocked to the area, it became apparent that there might not be enough space or facilities to host them all. There were inadequate sanitation facilities, a lack of food options, rising heat with no cooling systems, and overpriced water, which only worsened a growing irritation. Fueled by these tensions and amid aggressive music, the concert-goers lashed out. Violence became a domineering feature as the riot began. Looting followed soon after, with people whose belongings were stolen becoming increasingly agitated, and fires raged across the property. It was utter chaos. Trainwreck: Woodstock '99 ultimately explores what caused the descent into madness. With each passing episode, the docuseries goes from optimistic to apocalyptic. Trainwreck highlights the aggressive frat boy culture that was dominating the scene, and first-hand accounts from victims reveal the assault they were subjected to amid the growing crowd. The mosh pit was particularly dangerous at this point. Innocent crowd surfing became an easy entrance for non-consensual activities. Artists, crew, and attendees reveal the wild environment strewn with narcotics and aggression, and how it all played a role in the descent into a violent hellscape. Serving as a surreal horror movie, the documentary brings forth several documented and undocumented reports of traumatic assaults of a non-consensual nature. The audience is not only left shocked by those who witnessed and experienced such an atrocity, but Trainwreck also offers frightening footage that was taken of an event and the terror that was unleashed upon the festival. Number 7. In the 1970s and 80s, California was gripped by an unrelenting string of violent assaults and homicides. The unknown man behind the onslaught was nicknamed the original Night Stalker, and his MO was breaking into his victims' homes by prying open doors and windows as they lay sound asleep. He would often take jewelry, cash, coins, and identification. For more than 40 years, the maniac behind the violent crimes was unknown, and it wasn't until 2018 that he was finally apprehended. In a shocking twist, a police officer was revealed to be the one who carried out these attacks. Joseph James D'Angelo was thoroughly investigated for the next few years, and in 2020, he was sentenced to 11 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Before the long-standing mystery was solved, though, many sleuths and novelists would find themselves becoming increasingly obsessed with the concept of a deranged serial killer. One such individual was Michelle McNamara, who started her obsession with a magazine article about a maniac, and from there, a deep dive into an obsessive search began, and she began writing the popular book I'll Be Gone in the Dark, which follows McNamara's own chronicles as she attempts to solve a horrifying mystery. A documentary of the same name, based on the nonfiction true crime bestseller, would be released several years later, only for a sinister plot twist to be hidden within it. As the documentary delves into the novelist's efforts, we're thrown quite the disturbing curveball when it's revealed that McNamara had unexpectedly passed away in her sleep, aged just 46 years old. Her passing came with a combination of an undiagnosed medical condition and the overuse of prescription medication. But many viewers already knew of her passing before the documentary. McNamara had actually been laid to rest just before her initial book had been published. The documentary subsequently takes a twisted turn into the unexpected demise. The audience, who had just been following the sleuth's unrelenting story, was now forced to face the heartbreaking discussion of distraught family members and friends. The darkest moment came when her grieving husband, Patton Oswalt, gave his testimony about his beloved, now deceased wife. Making the documentary darker still would be the origins of the name that was given to the novel and the nonfiction series. The title, I'll Be Gone in the Dark, was based on a direct threat from the perpetrator himself. Number 6. In an American true crime documentary television series, director Zachary Heinzerling brings us the distressing retellings of an eerie cult and those who fell the victim to the hands of Larry Ray. Stolen Youth, Inside the Cult at Sarah Lawrence, submerses us in a chilling world that we would rather not experience ourselves, a world that others were forced to endure and live to tell the tale. The tale in question, as the docuseries title suggests, revolves around the formation of a cult at St. Lawrence College and the abuse that came along with it. This is no historical crime either. The modernity of the events that unfolded at the college is among the most distressing features. In 2010, 8 sophomores moved in together at Slonim Woods Building 9. Talia, Max, Dan, Gabe, Julia, Anna, Ezra Santos, Isabella, and Claudia each had a whole room to themselves, but that wouldn't last for long. Talia's father was Larry Ray, who'd recently been released from prison when he met his daughter's classmates that year. With no other place to go, he'd begin sharing the residence in Slonim Woods with the aspiring students, sleeping on Talia's couch almost every night. At first, no one really minded his presence. He cleaned, cooked, and brought takeout. But soon, Ray would begin to ensnare the students one by one. It went from, he's a little weird, to he's not so bad, and then he seems like a great guy. It only got more intense from there. The college students believed he was saving their lives, and that he was the best thing that could have happened to them. And eventually it became, I'll never listen to you if you speak ill of him. From that point on, Larry Ray, having successfully grabbed as much attention and control as he could, began to carry out a decade-long campaign. The onslaught brought forth psychological manipulation, physical abuse, assault, violent torture, extortion, human trafficking, and forced labor. Right at the college campus, Ray had established a cult-like environment where he exploited the students and isolated them from their families. Stolen Youth goes on to expose the 10-year-long ordeal with access to first-hand interviews, not only with the survivors, but the monster himself. In personal audio tapes and video recordings, Heinzerling unnerves his audience as they learn the grim influence that the con man had on a group of young people. The miniseries is strewn with intense, harrowing moments, from first-hand accounts to unseen tapes of the atrocities that were taking place in those years. The docuseries takes an even darker turn when audio recordings are presented to the audience. Stomachs turned, brows furrowed, and viewers were left bracing themselves as the unnerving sounds of pain called out by Claudia Drury rang out from their TV screens. She was one of the students of Sarah Lawrence, and her cries were the result of the intense torture she was being subjected to by Ray. Along with the audio, the survivor additionally gave a graphic, detailed account of what she'd been subjected to, leaving the audience chilled to the bone. To make matters worse, Stolen Youth also features extensive audio in which Ray's fear-inducing voice can be heard. The recordings of the criminal's intense interrogation sessions, during which he would coerce his victims to confess to various transgressions made against him. Among the false confessions were the narrative that they'd tried to poison him, or damage his property, and he intended to use this as evidence of his own innocence, an effort that would come to fail. Number 5. 21-year-old Kirk Anderson was sent to England as a missionary. He would serve the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commonly known as the Mormon Church. By September of 1977, he would be operating in Epsom and Ewell, a month that would prove most traumatic for him. Almost no one knew of the strange case of the young missionary until 2010, when a chilling documentary titled Tabloid was released, which conveys the series of events in strangely accurate detail. But there's a reason for this. Tabloid reveals that on the 14th of September 1977, young Anderson was in Banstead Road, outside of the Mormon meeting house, when out of nowhere a man with a firearm emerged from the shadows. He had the weapon drawn and was pointing it right at his target. Unnoticed, Anderson was forced into the car, chloroformed, and driven off into the darkness. Shocked and confused, he would come to an unfamiliar house, a cottage located in Oakhampton, Devon. He was now a captive, and for the next 3 days, the young man would be subjected to serious atrocities that left him scarred. Anderson was brutally chained to a bed with leg irons and handcuffs. During this time, he would learn his abductor's name. It was Keith May, who'd ambushed him with a fake weapon, but it wasn't he who wanted the missionary. May had abducted the man for someone else. American woman Joyce McKinney was the true mastermind behind this barbaric kidnapping. The reason behind this crime, she insisted, was self-professed lovesickness and all-consuming passion. During his capture, Anderson was forced into unwanted relations with McKinney, a fact not even she denied. 3 days later, on the 17th of September, Anderson made a run for it, though conflicting sources claim he was intentionally freed. Regardless of how he got out, he would hastily enter a nearby police station, reporting the ordeal and naming his kidnappers, who were promptly arrested and charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, possessing an imitation firearm with intent to harm, and a later assault charge. Both individuals were arrested. It would later emerge that McKinney had entered Britain under a false passport and was in possession of legal documents bearing 8 different false names. Tabloid revealed that during the trial, McKinney confessed to the use of chloroform, an imitation weapon, and the use of shackles. She would later express her motive as passion, claiming she feared retribution from the Mormons due to her association with a missionary, who had known her, it seems, prior to the incident. As hearings and trials were still underway, McKinney would be released on bail, but was required to remain in the country. Tabloid is narrated by Joyce McKinney, the kidnapper herself. Number 4. A family member or friend forgetting who you are is probably one of the most heartbreaking things to ever experience. Many have lost their parents to the merciless act of dementia, who one day said their name for the last time. Something similar would befall the Lewis family, but it wasn't a mother or a father. Instead, the subject who lost their memory was a twin brother who was just 18 years old when his entire life collapsed all around him. Alex Lewis's eyes slowly opened, adjusting to the brightness of the hospital room. He'd been in a motorcycle accident and fell into a coma, and as he came to, Alex realized that something was amiss. He didn't know where he was or who he was. He had no memory at all, and sitting across the room was something familiar, though. It was Marcus, his twin brother, whose name he could recall. With Marcus being the only person he recognized, the twin ended up becoming Alex's guide, helping him fill out his identity. The story was such an inspiration that it grabbed the attention of filmmaker Ed Perkins, who set out on a 3-year-long journey to build a relationship with the twins. This was a crucial gestation period needed before he could start filming Tell Me Who I Am, a heartbreaking and heartwarming documentary. But something sinister and grave was lurking beneath the surface of the idyllic life that Marcus had convinced his brother of. A secret that would be revealed, and Alex's life would fall apart again. The documentary explores Marcus's summary of the twins' lives together. They were well off, he said. They lived in a large house that was frequented by numerous members of high society. They had 2 very loving parents and would often go on extravagant family vacations together, and this was the only reality that Alex knew, He was convinced that his childhood had been ordinary, and it wouldn't be until he was 32 that he discovered something truly devastating. Unexpectedly, the twins' mother had passed away, and they began clearing out her things when Alex stumbled across some never-before-seen paraphernalia that had been locked away in a cabinet for years. The strange items weren't his main concern, though. He swiftly brushed them aside and revealed a locked dresser underneath. Upon opening it, he would find something unnerving. It was a distressing, headless photograph of him and Marcus when they were little. Alex became unhinged and asked his brother if they'd been abused as children. A harrowing yes left the amnesiac's ears ringing. He was livid. His entire existence had been revealed as a fabrication. The title of the documentary became relevant once more, since Alex was now left wondering about his history. Near the end of the documentary, Perkins asked the question, "Are you willing to tell me what happened to you in your childhood?" The studio grew uncomfortably silent. The question lingered in the air. No one had expected it, and Marcus, who knew the full history, had never uttered the details aloud. In the final moments of the film, the twin reveals something that he hadn't disclosed to his brother, even after he discovered the horrifying photograph and the abuse they'd suffered at the hands of their mother. Number 3. For 80 minutes, Rich Fox subjects his viewers to a wild ride as he explores the barbarity of the immersive horror experience Blackout through a documentary. Blackout Haunted House is an immersive experience that has redefined the meaning of haunted house. It blends lifelike scenarios that play into psychological fear with intense, choice-driven narratives. Not only is it intimate, but the deeper participants go, the more unsettling it becomes. Each Blackout experience is crafted to fit each participant's fear, creating an atmosphere of terror and vulnerability. Labeled a cultural phenomenon, the experience has become the driving force behind a new wave of immersive theater, threatening the boundaries of traditional storytelling. So bizarre is this experience that Rich Fox and his crew wanted to figure out why anyone would want to subject themselves to such unimaginable horrors, all of which would come together in the documentary film The Blackout Experiments. The film follows several participants who, since their very first blackout, have become absolutely obsessed with the escapade. In the documentary, Fox interviews repeat customers, hoping to understand why they keep coming back. And during his efforts, he captures the moments of intense fright and barbaric acts that they're willingly being subjected to, such as extreme torture methods. So intimate is the experience that participants must sign a waiver and are given a safe word to use if they become too uncomfortable or scared. The Blackout Experiments ultimately captures the obsession that these individuals have developed, and how it's hijacked their lives and blurred the line between healthy fear and paranoid fantasy. The audience is left bewildered, disturbed, yet entertained by the outlandish returns of repeat customers. They're left wondering when the acts will go too far, as each session becomes increasingly frantic. The participants are also not participating in such events for any reward. There's no gain to them aside from whatever reason they have for being so dangerously obsessed with fear. Number 2. It's being done under the cover of night, under the guise of cleaning the streets and removing criminals. It being the unyielding war against society's most downtrodden, the homeless community, whose numbers are growing by the day. In an eye-opening, intense, and dramatic documentary, the unfairness that such a community faces is brought to light, presented in a way never seen before. One Indianapolis summer, a city on Davidson Street, a man named Maurice, church volunteers, and bulldozers all come together in Under the Bridge, The Criminalization of Homelessness, a 2015 documentary. That year, Don Sawyer took his crew to the streets of downtown Indianapolis to meet with residents of homeless encampments and investigate the troubles they faced daily, mostly from the very people meant to protect them. The film was the direct result of dismantling one outdoor camp of unhoused individuals, an event that struck a nerve for the filmmaker. He subsequently set out on a relentless effort to hold the government responsible and publicize the ignorance. Under the Bridge follows a de facto mayor of the Davidson Street camp, a homeless group who lived beneath a bridge. The mayor, Maurice, is an older gentleman with dreadlocked hair who willingly dropped out of society to help the homeless, turning the encampment into a functioning community. At the start of the film, we discovered that this particular under-the-bridge community has been there for 20 years, housing more than 60 individuals. Maurice ensures that everyone's needs are met as he works with local volunteer church groups and outreaches. Each resident of Davidson Street is given 2 meals daily, which they feast on in the safe confines of their tents and makeshift shacks. The filmmakers, aided by Maurice, speak with a number of people who live there, exploring issues of mental health, addiction, and post-incarceration ostracism, the very act that sends former inmates into an unending cycle of poverty. The documentary carries a consistent dark tone throughout, revealing that instead of addressing the root cause of homelessness, the city threatens the community with arrest and felony trespass charges. None of these warnings has ever led to a single homeless individual suddenly being able to house themselves, but the darkest part of Under the Bridge, captured right there on film, was the destruction of the encampment that Sawyer and his crew had made the focus of their documentary. A bridge cleaning sign hung loosely from a beam, and below it, a no trespassing sign kept residents from re-entering the only home that they had known for a very long time. Police officers came into frame, ensuring that no unrest occurred as the bulldozers and cleanup crews moved in. The residents were forcibly evicted without being provided alternative housing solutions. They were left with their resources destroyed to find another place to live, a place that would be subjected to exactly the same treatment at some point. To make the documentary even more heartbreaking, Maurice Young, the man who was the front and center of the whole film, the man who left society to join the homeless in hopes of helping them survive, was placed under arrest and loaded into the back of a police cruiser. The advocate went willingly, resigning himself to the fact that he and others would face trespassing charges for their refusal to leave their home under the bridge. Number 1. There is a silent crisis underway, one that has only disturbed a few. But those few are the people who actually want to do something about it, even if it means simply making a documentary to spread awareness of the growing issue. The issue specifically is the refugee crisis. Famine, climate change, resource depletion, and war hold a stop sign to the lives of 65 million people around the world, telling them that nothing can be done. They have to move on. They have to save themselves. In 2019, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees reported that the number of people fleeing their homes and countries to escape violence is at its highest since the Second World War. The statistics were already known years earlier and caught the attention of director and artist Ai Weiwei, who would go on to detail the heartbreaking scene of the global refugee crisis in his 2017 documentary, Human Flow. He mentions the record high number of refugees floating in the millions, only for that record to be broken the next year, and the next, and the next. Human Flow offers a disturbing yet informative look at the largest human displacement since World War II. We're forced to face the harsh reality of the massive human migration crisis and its severe impact on human life. Weiwei's documentary takes us to 23 countries over the course of an eventful year, following the long chains of people moving across the globe, like the herds of bison that once dominated the North American landscape. The countries included places like Greece, Afghanistan, France, Bangladesh, Germany, Iraq, Italy, Israel, Kenya, Mexico, and Turkey. During his nationwide trip, Weiwei and his crew used several video techniques, offering alarming visuals, with the darkest moments showing the immense extent of the damage and displacement. There's a moment in the film when the director captures an extended line of people making their way down a forgotten path. He stands among them, not in the back of the row, but somewhere in the middle blending in. In the background, the path winds and viewers can see clusters of people growing smaller as they continue, highlighting the sheer number of people in just one area who are being forced to leave their homes in search of safety. In search of shelter and justice, many citizens were forced to cross perilous oceans, overpopulate refugee camps, and crawl through the barbed wire borders that have been placed there, not as a solution, but a deterrent to mercy. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.